my channel. Today we are very glad to have Kim to join us today. So Kim is a peer who experienced hoarding and cluttering issue themselves, and Kim also is a activist who is very, very enthusiastic and very helpful in helping people experiencing hoarding issues to find resources and connect with one another. So I'm very, very excited to have Kim here joining us today. And Kim will have her camera off, but you will hear her voice. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kim?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity. And I guess I would first say I started struggling with this quite a few years ago, and I just didn't know where to find help. So I have a family history of hoarding disorder with several relatives, and I had actually helped some of those relatives clear their homes. So I knew what this was. But then I had a few traumas myself, and it creeped up on me. And by the time I realized what was going on, I was in trouble. So I reached out to Dr. Skekety, and I had read one of her books and said, how do I find help? I'm just struggling online trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And she advised me to join a Buried in Treasures workshop and to get that book and to hopefully go back to therapy when I could afford it again. So that's where I pretty much started.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Yeah, I think many people can resonate with what you said about having some level of hoarding or cluttering related difficulties for a while, and then having something difficult, such as trauma that happened, that just kind of make things go to the next level. That's very difficult to recover and get back from. Yeah. So you mentioned some of the things that you have come across in the beginning of your healing journey. And I think that I would love to particularly chat with you today about the importance of connecting with people who also experience hoarding or cluttering issues. Because you and I have chatted earlier that during some of these programs, you realize, and maybe in the beginning you were more shy and be more actively participating in the peer or the interpersonal aspect of the kind of healing. But later on you find the importance of connection. So can you tell us more about how that has been for you?
Sure. I think we talked about this a little bit before. Connection is extremely important for most of the people in our group because you feel so alone. It's such an isolating disorder, and there's so much judgment and shame that goes with it. So when somebody is struggling, like I was, well, still am, we have a very hard time. And I at first joined Clutters Anonymous, and I told the leader of that group, I said, I'd like to come to some meetings, but I really don't want to say anything. Can I just join and listen? And he said, of course. He said, I know who you are. I'll let you in the meeting and just listen and, come as often as you want. It's free. We will get links for that group posted below. But it's Clutters Anonymous. They're a 12-step program. And that's pretty much where I started. I just would join at night in bed and I would listen and I wouldn't feel so alone.
Yeah.
And that was just such a huge step for me to realize that I wasn't the only one with this disorder. It wasn't just my family. There were many people struggling, and there were people out there helping. And I did join several other groups as time went along. I now go to at least 3 meetings a week and have for many years and continue to do that because it's part of my my healing journey, and it keeps me on track and keeps me focused.
Yeah, I think what you said is very, very important. So, two things that really stood out to me, like when you're saying that when you found Clutters Anonymous and you were just listening at night, and I just had this picture of like you listening in the darkness at night and hearing these people saying things that you resonate so deeply with, and especially things that it's really hard for you to find resonance outside in the outside world, meaning like in the world where hoarding is not talked about, right? So I can just imagine that like within that probably quite big of like a loneliness, but then you find that group and you feel some light and some warmth and connection and power in there. Did that kind of resonate?
Very much so. I didn't feel judged anymore. I didn't feel alone, and I could see that these people had been on their journey for quite some time and had found a way through. Many people were still struggling. It takes a long time to get through this sometimes, depending on how long your clutter's been accumulating. But they were working at it every single week, and I saw the same people come back week after week, and everybody knew each other and they all knew everybody's story. And it was like a little family. Now that so many meetings are on Zoom, people are joining from all over the country, different meetings, but you still get to know the people and you can appreciate that we're all just trying to get a little better every day. And, we all have our struggles and there's no judgment. We just all are there to support each other and to listen and to just be there for one another.
Mm. That's beautiful. Yeah. And I hope that there are more and more such spaces opening up for people experiencing hoarding. And I even hope that this would be something that people can talk about. Like people, not to say that people have easy time talking about depression, but I think people have a lot easier time talking about depression, anxiety than talking about hoarding. So it's so needed, this kind of space.
Yes, I have spoken to many people who go to therapy and have never brought up the topic of their hoarding with their therapist. It's very common. So, um, we haven't really talked about this yet, but I'll bring it up now. I started a support group on Facebook because I was so frustrated with the lack of resources for people with hoarding disorder. And it was so hard for me to find help. And I thought, I don't want anybody else to go through this frustration. So my Facebook group, we can post a link to that. It's Buried in Treasures and Hoarding Disorder Support Group on Facebook. It's only for people who struggle with hoarding disorder. There are other groups for family and friends. We keep our group just for people with hoarding disorder, so there's no judgment. You'll never see a comment from a family member that might make you feel bad. It's just a safe place for us to post, and you can find resources there. That's my main goal. If there's a lecture or a training, wherever it may be, it could be, in Europe, Australia, California, we will post that. We have people from all over the world in our group, and it's one central station for everything hoarding disorder. And I get things sent to me from many different people, but I want to provide free, affordable resources for people who are struggling with this disorder. And we also post paid programs there as well. And some people can afford them, but I usually also post some sort of alternative that is a free option. So, everybody has the option for some sort of help.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you shared that, and I'm even more glad that you started it. Yeah, that's why I call you a activist.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
we We have worked together. I took one of your trainings on self-compassion, and that was amazing. And I think that's a key part of helping people with hoarding disorder. I know that you're able to use CFT for your patients, but you also do trainings on self-compassion, which were super helpful for me and the other person that helps me to manage my group. And when you talk about the connection, being able to take courses like that with the other person in my other admin in my group, we have learned so much about each other and our struggles. And I remember one of the things that you had us do was write a letter to ourselves. And that was so challenging for both of us. But for us to be able to read those letters to each other was such an impactful session. And these are little things that we're learning from other experts in the field to help us get rid of that judgment and shame and give ourselves a little bit of grace and compassion and learn how to give ourselves more love. And we are very good at beating ourselves up, and we're very good at judging ourselves and saying negative things to ourselves. But every once in a while, we need to be reminded that a little self-compassion and grace and self-love can go a long way and to help us get unstuck.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I so appreciate that you share that experience with us. And I think that in that workshop, we also explored our difficulties in terms of connecting with people, even with people who also struggle with hoarding and cluttering, right? So, like we run workshops, like the training workshops that you were just describing, and we also run therapy groups. So I can see that even in these kind of settings, people can still have a hard time connecting. And it doesn't mean that they don't participate or anything, but there's a different level, different kind of levels of vulnerability that each individual is comfortable with. And I often find that a lot of times when people struggle with hoarding issues, it's kind of like a chicken or egg question. Is it like in the sense that whether it's because of the hoarding that I experience, that's why I feel like I need to hide away from people, that's why I'm feeling more separated, isolated, alone? Or is it more like because I don't connect that well and that safely with people, so I feel more and more isolated and lonely and unsafe and disconnected, and therefore things become my good friends, things become my source of comfort. So like we're starting to want to do more things about through the way the things that we offer through the practice or just talk about on YouTube channels like this to encourage people, especially this population, to really train the emotional muscles to be more vulnerable, more brave, more willing to connect in a deeper way. So I wonder if any of this that I just said kind of resonated with your experience, and if you have any like any personal experience or any kind of journey that you've been through that you could share with us.
Everything you said resonates with me, and I think a lot of people will say the same thing. They will tell me their personal trauma and journey privately, but they don't want to share it publicly with the group or with other people. So, um, I think we're finding that many people have trauma. A lot of it's interpersonal trauma. Um, Many people have struggles with their family when they were growing up, a lack of love and caring while they were growing up. So I think a lot of us, like I personally was assaulted and I stopped wanting to be around anybody. I put a barrier up around me and I stopped going out. I stayed home. I, my best friend also passed away. I had like four things happen all at once, and I just shut down. I say my brain, my heart, my soul, and my nervous system just said, we're done. And I stopped doing everything and I started replacing all of my connection with things. And I would go and pick up things on the side of the road for free on the weekends. I would go to thrift stores. I was bringing in carloads of things, and that was where I was spending my time. I would bring it in piles and have all these hopes for everything and never did anything with it. I just accumulated and accumulated. And the first bit of it actually started in my bedroom, which is where my assault happened. And I never realized that until I heard somebody else talk about it in a different training. So I completely filled up my bedroom almost chest high with stuff because that was a protection. The person who assaulted me left the day after the assault, but I still felt like I needed protection. And that's how my brain chose to do it. So I had to work through that with therapy, and I finally did EMDR therapy for my trauma. It was a long process. So I worked on my depression, my anxiety, my trauma, and it's taken me years to get there. But I'm so glad that I took the time to do it and to take all these little steps. I almost think it's, like a journey every year. One year I did EMDR therapy. One year I did courses like your course. The first year I started, I did the Buried in Treasures course, the book, and then started my weekly meetings. Like everything was like every new year I added on a different thing that I would work on. So I didn't try to tackle it all at once. I just took little baby steps in the right direction. I talked to all the experts and said, what is helping people with hoarding disorder? I didn't want to talk to an organizer. I didn't want to talk to people that couldn't help me. I went straight to the top and started working little by little on the things that they advised me to do.
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Kim. I truly, 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 truly appreciate and grateful. I feel grateful for your vulnerability and generosity in sharing your story with us. I think that a lot of people can resonate, and is a lot of people who are listening is perhaps having that same aha moment that you had when you heard this other person said, oh, they started to accumulate things in the space that they felt unsafe in, right? And a lot of times that people do recognize over time that clutter is kind of like a physical barrier that makes us feel emotionally safe. And so it's like visible protection for some invisible fear that's in us.
That's exactly how I feel. If I could sort of just stick all my stuff around me, I would feel safer. And
Mhm.
that is how a lot of us feel. I mean, like a lot of us with trauma, they say, you can use a weighted blanket or something like that because I really feel like I need something to protect me. It's
Mhm.
a very bizarre thing to try to tell somebody who's not familiar with hoarding disorder how we can look around and they say it's clutter blindness or whatever. Like I don't see it as I didn't see it for many years as clutter or as, extra stuff or whatever you want to call it. I felt comforted by all of it. I did not feel uncomfortable at all. I felt extremely protected by the stuff. And that was my defense mechanism against people who had hurt me and the experiences that had hurt me. It
Mm.
was my defense mechanism.
Yeah. And it's not just a defense mechanism to people who have hurt you, but I imagine it's also a defense mechanism for people who can potentially hurt you, or even people you haven't met yet who can potentially hurt you.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
It was to keep the world and everyone away, pretty
Mm.
much. But at the same time, I was still going to work. Nobody knew about any of my issues. My family knew that I was getting worse, but they didn't really know the extent of it until I started going for treatment.
Mm. I see. So how did you go from that place to a place where you're facilitating this like Facebook group? And it also sounds like you are not just doing posting. It's like because I my impression is that you have to be actively involved with these different group members and different community members, and it also seemed like you are a major connector of different people, different resources, and you talk with them, you listen to them. How did this shift happen?
Well, I was very nervous and I had a lot of fear, but I said, like my big joke is I say, I'm going to jump out of the plane and grow wings on the way down. And that's what I did. I said, I'm going to start this thing. I have no idea how to do it. I'm not a very technical person, and everybody will laugh when they hear that because they know I struggle. I mean, I can barely run a Zoom meeting, but for me to start a Facebook group was just ridiculous. But I did. And I ended up starting a couple more after that. But I just said, I'm going to figure this out. And my partner in crime, I should have asked her if I could mention her name, but my co-admin, she joined like a week after I started the group. And she said, I'm so happy to find your group. I do a lot of research. And I said, great, be my co-admin. And she said, I'm in. And we've been partners in crime ever since, trying to help people. We do tons of research. We both love research. So it's a great combination. And she's more techie than I am, thank God. But we just said we're going to start this and we're going to try to provide resources for people. It used to be a more open forum and I'd let people post there, and we didn't have a lot of rules, but that got a little out of hand sometimes. So people were posting things that weren't related and some arguing was happening. So I just didn't want to have to monitor that during the day when I have my full-time job. So we kind of nailed it down to only, the admins can post, people can comment under there. So we post, I try to post at least 5 or 6 things every week. A lot of it's tips that I've learned from different coaches that I've worked in, for hoarding disorder, and a little motivational thing with it. And then, we post weekly wins and small goals, things like that, and just all the resources that come my way for any sort of training having to do with hoarding disorder. All of that gets posted there. And that's our main goal, is to just let people know they're not alone, that there is help out there, and that you can do this. It takes time, patience, and some resources, but it can be done.
Mm. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that decision to jump off a plane and just try somehow grow your wings before you fall, that wow, I bet it's motivated by this like really, really compassionate desire to have people have what you wish that you had.
I just think that we can waste a lot of our life looking in the wrong direction for the wrong help. And if we get the right help when we're ready, we can get through this.
Mm.
And I think It's people who know nothing about hoarding disorder, will say, why can't you just throw out the stuff? Why can't we just, you'll go away for a week, we'll clean your house out, and it'll be better when you come back, and you won't have to deal with it. They don't understand that things like forced cleanouts are the worst possible thing you can do for somebody with hoarding disorder. It is not suggested at all. It can cause major, major anxiety for somebody with our disorder. And the facts are the stuff always comes back, and sometimes it comes back worse than it did before. So people who are helping people with hoarding disorder need to get educated. They need to have the facts, the resources behind them in order to coach people the right way. If somebody's obviously in a situation where their house is caving in because of the stuff, or they're going to get evicted, that's a different situation, and they have to deal with that differently. But we have so many people who are out there getting help from professionals that are just not trained in hoarding disorder, and it's not helpful. So I always advise people, here are the resources that we have that are free or affordable. You have a bunch of stuff on your YouTube that is free. You have that 20 session um, program that you did quite a while ago. You have all of the series here. We have Elaine Birchall in Canada who does a weekly Zoom meeting. We can post a link for that.
Yes, please.
That's just for people with hoarding disorder. And there's 3 or 4 years worth of recorded podcasts there. All of that's free and available for people who need support. And you can just start there.
Yeah. And so I imagine for people, if you are new to like you're new in this place of like thinking about, do I have hoarding issues, or do I simply just don't have enough time to sort through my stuff? Do I actually have a difficulty letting things go? Yeah, I think that listening to this, you may feel like, do I identify with this? So, Kim, can you share a little bit more about like when you started to join your first Clutters Anonymous meeting? The part of you feel like, well, I don't know if I can feel a sense of belonging with this group because I'm still not quite sure if this is what I identify with.
Oh no, I identified right away. I knew because I have a family history of this. So I would say not everybody in my family has the same level of hoarding disorder, but I have relatives that have functioning homes where they can use their kitchens, their bathrooms, but there are other rooms that are completely full almost to the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then I have other relatives who had homes that weren't able to be functional. They didn't have kitchens that were working, they didn't have bathrooms that were working. So I had quite a different perspective on this going in once I realized it was happening to me. I knew what it was. I knew that I had a big problem. I kind of caught it in the middle. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, I'm thankful that I did because it's taken me a very long time to deal with what I have. But, there's blessings that happen. My whole basement flooded once and I had to get rid of everything. But I had already taken some of the courses and I knew that it was time to let go. So I was able to let go of all the stuff and look at it for what it was and say, it's time to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And out of everything in my basement, I kept my divorce papers, a pair of slippers my grandma made me, which I washed, and some fishing maps that I just laid out to dry. And almost everything else went right up and out into my driveway, and I hired a construction truck to come and pick it up and they took it away. And that was a big day. It was horrible and hard, but I said, it's time to let go. And I could because I'd done all this training and therapy and no longer held on to everything so tightly. And
Mm,
I talk a little bit um, sometimes when I talk to people about this disorder, and I say the first time I had to let something go, it was two army cots. And in my head, I was going to fix them. I knew somebody that could fix the canvas. I knew somebody that could repair the wood. I didn't pay a lot of money for them, but there was something about army cots that just stuck in my head that I could not throw them away. I was going to save them. I was going to rescue them. Who knows what I would have done with them after they were fixed. But they sat on my porch for probably 4 years. And as I was going through my porch, it was one of the first things I started to let go of. And
mm,
it took me about an hour to let go of those two things. And I sat outside with a garbage bag and those army cots, and I said, why am I doing this? What is so hard about this? And I just worked through it and talked out loud about all of my struggles. And like you say, you're building those decluttering muscles every time you make a decision and you can work through letting go. And even if it takes you an hour to do it, you're building that muscle. And the next time it might take you a half an hour. And if it's something easier, maybe it takes you 5 minutes. But I still struggle even after all of this treatment. Sometimes I'll look at something and say, oh, I can fix that, or I'll repair it. And then I have to kind of walk myself back and say, no, you're not going to repair it. You're not going to fix it. You're going to put it in a pile and it's going to sit there. It's time to let it go. And it's okay if I put it in the trash. And it's not my responsibility to save the world and the planet. I can save my home instead and not have this time capsule, you know, constant repair shop of a home, because that's pretty much what it turned into. I was going to rescue everything that everybody put to the curb and find a home for it. And I think I fixed like two things out of all the stuff that I accumulated.
mm,
So I had big dreams, big goals, but in reality, it all just came in and sat in piles.
mhm. Yeah, and it really takes time to I think that what takes more time is not the actual action of discarding. It's not even actual the moment of making the decision to discard. It's it's taking that we take time to understand what's really important for us. And we take time to really understand like what's the real place that's aching, what's the real place that's in lack, and what's the real place that needs our compassion and our love. I think that a lot of these things that we accumulate, or a lot of these acts that we go through to accumulate things, it comes from a deeper place that's in our heart that is invisible. Maybe a sense of lack, a sense of I'm not enough, I don't have enough, I don't feel safe, like you shared earlier about the experiences after the assault. So actually, what takes more time is for us to have that reckoning of, oh, it's not about the stuff. The stuff is here because all of these deeper things. And then once that realization is there, then the next hard thing that we have to do is to be committed to heal the real thing that needs to be healed. And then the letting go naturally becomes easier. So a lot of times we may feel like, why am I taking so long? Like, why is this thing sitting on my porch for 4 years? It's because it's probably taken you 4 years to have whatever you needed inside your heart to actually go face that thing and to actually say to yourself, hey, you know what? My space is for me. My space is like it's more like I am more important than these things and the potential of these things once they are fixed. Because my needs, my current needs, is to have more space so that I can feel more relaxed.
Absolutely. As I went through treatment, I learned a lot of things. I was kicked out of my house when I was younger. I was 16. So I had a constant worry about having enough food to eat, having enough clothes. Am I going to have a place to live? There were all of these things that I think helped trigger some of this. And as I worked through my trauma, I had to just realize and remind myself I do have enough. I am enough. I am safe in my home now. And it's time to let go of this stuff so I can make room for the life that I want now. And one of the things I did was I joined a watercolor class and I cleared out my porch, and one whole section of my porch now is where I do my watercolor painting. And funny enough, I'm like, actually, people want to buy my watercolor paintings, which I never thought that would happen. But I did pottery for many years, and art was a big part of my heart and soul. But there was so much stuff in my house that I couldn't do any of these things. And cooking, that wasn't something I could do because there was just so much stuff in the kitchen. And as I started to clear the kitchen, I started to eat healthier, I started to cook more. So as I started to declutter and get rid of the stuff, I started to reclaim my life. And, at one point, I just got disenchanted with all of the stuff. And I said, I've had enough. I want my life back. And I deserve to have a clean, uncluttered home that's safe. And, it's not going to ever probably look like an HGTV home, but it can be safe and it can be functional and it can have the things in there that are important to me now in my life. So, I had things from my past that I just couldn't let go of because I was still connected. I was still so tied to the past. And I learned how to live more in the moment and in the present. And I started meditating, and I actually became a meditation teacher, which is very funny for people that know me because I used to say, one of my teachers said, anxiety is like 100 wild horses going in 100 different directions in your brain all the time, especially at night. And that's how I was. I was very high strung, very anxious, and I never thought in a million years I could learn how to meditate by myself without a teacher or without a tape. And then I just took baby steps to learn how to calm my nervous system, and then decided that I wanted to teach others how to do that too. So I've come a long way, and that has helped me with my journey for hoarding disorder because it's very hard to make decisions and to do the hard work when your state is, so full of anxiety and depression. I mean, there are people that don't want to get out of bed and brush their teeth, let alone clean a corner of a room. And I get that. I was there. But as you work on the stuff under the stuff, we call it, we can get there day by day. It just takes time and the right help. And like I've said before, self-compassion and learning how to just start again every day. Every day is a new day. Every day is a fresh start. Stop beating ourselves up. Give ourselves a little bit of encouragement, and, we can do this.
Thank you so much, Kim. I love everything that you said. Like when we decided to do this recording, I was thinking about let's talk more about connecting with fellow people who experience hoarding, which we covered. But I hadn't remembered that we also need to connect with ourselves. And what you just shared is such a good reminder of how important it is for people, especially people with hoarding issues, to tolerate that anxiety, tolerate that even like the self-disgust. A lot of people say to me that I don't want to even look at the mirror. I feel like I don't want to look at myself. I don't like myself. I hate myself. And then so I just want to run away from myself. And how can we help ourselves when that's the relationship that we have with ourselves? And like Kim said, how can we sit down and sort through a pile whenever we become quiet, we just feel so anxious and so much want to run away from our internal space, not just external. We actually want to run away from facing our emotions, facing our feelings, and facing ourselves. So it's so, so, so important. I'm so glad that you shared this part about how beautiful it was that you even became a meditation teacher. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a leap for me. And I never, if you told me 10 years ago I was going to become a meditation teacher, I would tell you were full of it. I would laugh in your face and say, no way. I cannot calm down for 5 seconds, let alone meditate for a half an hour. But I went to a week retreat with John Kabat-Zinn and his son Will, and I forced myself to learn how to meditate. I never would have taken that retreat had I known how much meditation we actually would have had to do during that retreat. I wouldn't have gone, I'll be honest with you, but it saved my life. He said in my book, he wrote in my book, because I talked to him about my trauma and my hoarding disorder issues and how I was using meditation to help me calm down so that I could calm my amygdala so I could actually think and work on my life. Because when your nervous system is in such a state of fight and flight from trauma and things like hoarding disorder, my prefrontal cortex was not working right. I could not make decisions. I could not plan. I couldn't manage my time. There were so many things that were just not working well because of the state of my nervous system. And he wrote in my book, meditate every day as if your life depended on it.
Mm,
And I think about that very, almost every day because it did help to save my life. It's an essential part of recovering and moving forward with hoarding disorder and moving through life in general. When I get triggered by somebody at work, I will walk out and meditate for 10 minutes and it helps me to regulate my nervous system. So there's so many things that I don't think we talk about enough with hoarding disorder that can help us. And we're all very different with our comorbidities. Some people have ADHD. I don't have that. So if we can, get tips and help on our different comorbidities that we have, then I think we can, work every day towards getting through this. You're not going to get through this disorder, but you can make it better with by working on the stuff under the stuff, as we call
mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I can't agree with you more. And yeah, like that's why and so for people who are listening, even if so if meditation is not your thing, first of all, think about Kim. She thought it wasn't her
it.
thing.
Oh, it wasn't my thing at all.
Yeah, it wasn't her thing at all. Secondly, think about, okay, if sitting down meditation is not so much your thing, what about what is your alternative version of what is your way of meditating? As long as it's kind of like the term you use, Kim, your state of mind. your state of being. Like it's so important because when we are in the fight or flight, how can we do anything that's constructive? All that we want to do when we are in fight or flight is something immediate to feel better right away. And that in hoarding disorder context looks like turn on the TV, run
Hmm.
away from doing the things that will actually change your life for the better. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
started with walking meditation. That's how I started. I could not sit and meditate. There was no way that was ever going to happen.
great. Yeah. So we'll collect the information, the resources, and things that helped Kim, and also information about Kim's Facebook group and how to join, all that kind of things. And of course, Clutter is anonymous. And so basically everything Kim talked about, she'll generously share with us. And it will be down below. So you're listening, that you see the caption, you can see all the links there. So I'm so glad that Kim, that you joined us and shared so generously with us today. I so appreciate you and so appreciate that all the things that you've done, including taking a meditation retreat. That's another example, right? Of like jumping off the plane and then trying to fly
Yes.
away. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kim. And so I hope that maybe in the future you can join us again and share your new discovery.
Sure, anytime. Thank you so much for having me, and we appreciate all that you do and all of the resources that you have on your YouTube page and your courses. You're definitely a shining light for a lot of us that struggle with us with this disorder, and your group is fantastic. So thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you, Kim.